Okay, good afternoon, morning, wherever everybody is. This is Lisa. I think we're going to get started. As we get going, I'll start with just some technology things here. So if you can't hear me, please turn on or turn up the sound on your computer. You can check the chat function and you might have to select more. You can see that on the screen there. And we're also going to have the chat box open for introductions and questions throughout the webinar. So can somebody again just type in that you guys can hear me in the chat box? All right. They said yes. We're good to go. Excellent. All right. So some brief introductions. We'll start with Georgia here.
Hi, I'm the director of the fellowship program, and we're really glad that you've joined us today. We're going to move through some of the standard stuff pretty quickly today so we can really focus on writing. Next up.
And I am Lisa Florin. I'm one of the graduate coordinators here in the office, and I'm also a fellow myself. I'm in the Master of Public Health program in the midst of finals right now. So once I finish this webinar, I'll be going back to finish my paper on social support in populations who have experienced homelessness. Just a little snapshot into my life.
Hi, Lauren isn't here today, but I'm Shelley Hawthorne Smith. I'm the assistant director, and I actually deal mostly with fellowships for graduate students generally all over the university. And I'm happy to talk to any of you about that. But I also was a Peace Corps volunteer, and I love helping with this program as well. So I look forward to hopefully meeting many of you in the future.
Can I also just add that Lisa is working with the application process this year, and Lauren, who is in Spain actually with her academic program, is managing our current fellows. So if you have questions about applications, Lisa is your go-to person, as am I, especially over the winter break when Lisa is off.
Okay. So today we're briefly going to go over the fellowship program itself and the benefits, and then the application process and timeline. But then we're going to spend a little more time than usual providing some tips about completing your applications. Shelley is a wonderful writer and also excellent at advising people about writing. So she's going to give some pointers about essays and also resumes, because those are two components of the application. And then we'll end by going over the review process and the selection process for fellows, and end with some questions. Everybody's welcome to type questions in the chat box as we go along. We'll stop a couple times throughout, but then also save some time at the end to go over things. So just some background about the academic and community environment that we have with our Coverdell Fellows program and at the University of Arizona. Right now, we partner with about 49 programs in 11 colleges, and we mostly work with master's students, though occasionally we do have some PhD fellows. We have a really large interdisciplinary network, and people study in these fields that you see, but they also work in them through the outreach assistantship. And with your outreach assistantship, you can really explore areas that might not be directly in your day-to-day academic program. We have dual degree programs. Right now, I think we have 5 dual degree students, and we have a lot of opportunities for fellows to collaborate on academic projects throughout these different disciplines.
You've probably looked at the peacecorps.gov website as well as our own site and scratched your head about what it means. I know different Coverdell programs work differently. We give our Coverdell students a 0.25, a quarter-time graduate outreach assistantship, and it works just the same way as a teaching or a research assistantship in terms of benefits and time. The quarter time is a commitment of about 10 hours a week over the academic year, beginning the week before classes and ending the last day of each semester, the last day of classes. It waives all non-resident tuition, base tuition we call it, and it also covers 1/2 of the in-state tuition. It does not cover program fees or mandatory fees, we call it, which you can best identify by going to the Bursar's tuition calculator. That's really the easiest way to see it. You may ask, this is this year's tuition. What about next year's tuition? The Board of Regents passes tuition in about April of each year, so we never really know until we know. And basically, the assistantship rolls with increases in tuition. The assistantship also provides a stipend that's actually $8,450, I believe. And it also provides your student health insurance, which is with Aetna and is considered third best student health insurance in the country. So it's the cost of that varies from year to year. One nice thing about the student health insurance is that it's for a 12-month period, so it covers your summer as well. Students also receive a small discount at the University of Arizona bookstore, which is handy if you're buying a greeting card or something or a book. They have sales that are better than the discount, but if you combine the two, you do okay. And we also offer to especially to our first year students, work study, which is another form of federal financial aid. It can be up to $3,000 depending on your financial need as determined by the federal financial aid form called FAFSA. It's offered and can be used in off-campus, non-U of A work, for example, with a nonprofit, a governmental agency, or an educational institution. It's not required that you take it. It's, I think of it as basically in lieu of loans. You're paid a fee, but you work for it. So that's generally what the financial benefits are. And are there,
I think that was just
okay, that's the basics. And if you have specific questions, for example, dual degree tuition is a little bit more complicated. A fair number of departments do have additional program fees, such as the Eller Business School, Public Administration, landscape architecture, planning, and public health in particular. So you can contact us if you have questions about those.
And so those are some of your benefits as a fellow, but this slide briefly outlines the requirements that come with participating in our program here. The first one, and Georgia alluded to this, is your outreach assistantship. So this is kind of like an internship or a job that you report to about 10 hours a week. Most of them, you have to be serving an underserved community in some way. And so our fellows do that through work with local nonprofits, and also different offices on the university that work in the community. I'm trying to think of a good example. What might one be of maybe the Arizona AIDS Education Center. So that's housed at the University of Arizona, but they do work out in the community and across the state. So there are a lot of different possibilities for the outreach assistantship. It does take up probably, it's the largest time commitment of the requirements, but I've personally found it extremely beneficial, and I really appreciate that I have the chance to work in the community and put my academic work to some kind of professional development use. We also do service projects. We have a requirement of doing a few different service projects over the course of the academic year, but we also provide a lot of opportunities through our office to do group service projects. Typically about one each month is offered. So we might go and pack bags of food at the community food bank. This past weekend, fellows were working at the 4th Avenue Street Fair. It's this big Tucson tradition that brings in vendors from all over the community, and we help by supporting the vendors and bringing them snacks and water. So those are service projects. And then professional and leadership development is another requirement. We want to make sure that everyone is staying on track to have leadership skills going along with your academic course of study. And so we have some connections to different resume writing workshops, panels, alumni events to keep you on track for looking beyond the years in your academic program. And then outreach activities is the last component, and that's a lot of the Peace Corps third goal. So we work with the on-campus recruiter for Peace Corps. University of Arizona has a Peace Corps prep program to help undergraduates get on the path to doing Peace Corps service when they leave the university. And so we'll meet with those undergraduate students. We'll also go to local schools and elementary schools, middle schools, high schools to talk about our service. Oh, okay, and we got one question right at the end when we were going to take our question pause. So the question is, are all of these outreach programs planned by the Coverdell Fellowship Program, or does each member have to find local groups to work with on their own? That's a great question. So our assistantships, we do set up a lot of opportunities for incoming fellows to find a placement. We do that in probably around May, early June. We'll set up some online informational interview type of sessions where you can chat with different representatives from agencies interested in having someone do their outreach assistantship there. And generally, there are more positions than there are fellows. So we try to make it easy for you to find a good fit, but you're also welcome to find something on your own. And that might take a little bit of extra work to work with them and get the paperwork in order if they've never hosted a fellow. But we have about 150 partner agencies around Tucson who have hosted fellows in the past. So even if they're not currently hosting one, chances are they've worked with our program at some point, and it's usually not too much of a problem to get things started up with them again. And the outreach activities, those are often, we have different current fellows, we have a club, and they will organize some of those activities to go to the local schools. The campus recruiter will set things up and then kind of offer time slots for the fellows to come and table at a different outreach fair or come to a specific class. So, and the same with the service activities, our office and the graduate coordinator will help organize a lot of those. So we try to make it really easy, but you are also welcome to do your own service activities if you have a group that you already like to work with. Good. All right. So we'll just keep on trucking and talk about applications, the application process. So one thing to keep in mind is that you must apply to your academic program and the Coverdell Fellows Program. At some universities, the academic program application will get forwarded to a Coverdell coordinator, but our office, since we're working with so many different colleges, we have our own set of procedures. So we do ask that you submit a separate application to us. It is helpful if you let your academic department know that you are applying for the Coverdell when you do that. So our applications have been open since November 1st. It's on the website. We've also sent out a few emails, so definitely encourage you to look over the questions if you haven't already. You can look it over without submitting, so it should give you time to think about the questions, and especially with your essays, which we'll get into in a moment, plan out what you think you want to write. We will start reviewing the first round on January, right after that deadline, so January 15th. And any applications that have come in before then will all get reviewed in that first priority deadline. We really recommend submitting by this deadline, but we will accept applications until March 1st. That being said, we'll probably start sending acceptance notifications in mid-March, maybe late March. I'm looking at Georgia and she's like, well, we'll see. And we're saying that because a lot of it isn't necessarily in our hands. We have to wait. We try to wait until the academic departments have accepted applicants before we offer them a Coverdell fellowship, and they're all on very different timelines. So we're a little bit at their mercy. So yes, just the main point to remember here, remember that the application for the Fellows Program and your academic program are separate. Anything else to add there? All right.
All right, we often get questions about your GRE and your grades and that sort of thing, and that transcript problems, all of that really needs to go to the academic program that you're interested in. If you look at the main graduate college page, grad.arizona.edu, and click on search for programs, it'll give you a really nice little synopsis of requirements, the degrees offered, and most importantly, the contact information, the admissions coordinator, and also a faculty coordinator. So those are really who you should be talking with about anything to do with the academic program. Can I do this? Can I do that? Sometimes the student's not sure which department they want to apply to because there is some overlap or different emphases, for example, between natural resources, water society and policy versus hydrology versus environmental engineering. So we can help with that sort of thing. We can kind of steer you to programs and explain the general difference between them. But in general, you want to reach out and make a connection with the academic department. And in some colleges, just be forewarned, it's really important that you have an academic faculty sponsor, especially in the College of Ag and Life Sciences is the primary school where that's a really important thing. And then, of course, if you're in a doctoral kind of degree. We help with all the rest of it, anything having to do with the Coverdell application, the academic program referrals, as I mentioned. We have guidance for the cohort once assembled about moving to Tucson. Shelley's expert on childcare issues and how that works at the university, fellows orientation, people that other Coverdell fellows we can connect you with who either are in the program or served in your country. And yeah, that's what we do. So I would add to the last page, though, please be sure to apply by the priority deadline of January 15th. The second round is the March 1st deadline. And last year we had a large number of applicants and quite a few, very few slots relative to the number of applicants. So you want to get your application materials in so they'll be considered in the first round.
And before we go on, I see that there were two other questions that came in. One about if the outreach assistantship partners, if any of them offer weekend or evening hours. Absolutely. I actually had one that did all Saturday and evening hours for my outreach assistantship last year. And yeah, that can work out really well depending on whatever your course of study is. So there is a range of options. And also a lot of the partners, I think, are flexible about how you do your hours, where you do them, and when you do them. And it does not change each semester. Actually, I think we require you to stay for at least one semester. Definitely recommend staying for the entire year. And many people end up staying for 2 years. And I think it makes sense. It's kind of like Peace Corps, where your first year, you're kind of getting the lay of the land, and then you can get a lot of things done in your second year. So yeah, you're welcome to switch things up, but we find that a lot of people get a lot of value from staying at the same place throughout their fellowship. And then the second question, are fellows allowed to also be teaching and research assistants? Is that not recommended? So we are allowed to have 0.66 FTE, 0.7? 0.67, sorry, there's some rounding. I couldn't tell you how many hours that translates to per week that you can work for the university. It's around 25, maybe 30. It doesn't, it's okay.
It's difficult because it includes summer.
Okay.
It's over a 12-month period.
But basically, what it boils down to is our outreach assistantship is 0.25. So, and most teaching and research assistantships are also 0.25. So if you did two together, that would put you up to a 0.5, well within the allowable range of working at the university. And yes, we have many fellows who get second positions, being a TA, doing research. So it's definitely possible. I held off on doing it my first semester because I wanted to see how I would do with my workload. But I have a second one this year, and I think a lot of second years especially do take on an additional assistantship.
This is Shelley. That's a good question. So I would say ideally you have the 0.25 Peace Corps outreach assistantship and then a 0.25 teaching or research assistant position. So that's probably the ideal situation. If they're offering, I'm just guessing, maybe you're communicating with a department, and if they're offering you a 0.5 position, you could ask for 0.25 if you really want to be a fellow. There's different ways to sort of deal with that. So if you are accepted into the Peace Corps Fellows Program, then kind of be in contact, and generally that can be figured out.
Great point.
One other thing to know about the assistantship, though, is even though we said it's roughly 10 hours a week, it's not a union position. So it's really based on the hours required to do the job. So it is well known that in some departments, the number of hours, for example, to teach a course in the English department vastly will exceed 10 hours or 20 hours if you're doing a 0.5 for the year. So it really does sort of boil down to a department by department sort of thing, and it depends on the nature of the job, but it can definitely be combined. So.
Okay, we are almost right on time. I'm so proud. We'll talk a little bit about the application and then how to be a competitive applicant. So just a brief overview of our application. Again, you can find it online on our website, but the basic components are: we ask about your background information, your academic program of interest, information about your Peace Corps service. We request your DOS, a resume, and then your responses to 3 essay questions. We often get the question of if you can submit an application if you don't have your DOS yet. And the answer is yes. You would just submit a draft version that basically states when you're planning to complete your service, the date of that, and a letter from your country director stating that you're on track to complete your service by that date. And just, if you just got on, just be sure you mute your mic. Yeah, I think that covers the basics of the application there. How to be a competitive applicant. I'm going to pass the mic to the people who have much more experience in this area than me.
Hi, this is Shelley again. In as much as you can, think about the fact that this is a competitive fellowship and that we are looking for people who have the goals of serving an underserved community, hopefully long-term, and who have a really good sense of how their academic degree is going to move them to their next stage in their life. This says we review each applicant holistically. It's not just about GPA, and I'd say that's really true. We do look at the whole package, and it's certainly not true that people who have always done, been 4.0 are definitely the best fit for this program. So think about the goals of the Peace Corps Fellows program and how you fit into those and how your future goals fit into those.
Okay. Trying to see over there to the, okay, yeah. So there's a nice little short list there. We do know that some students come in and they aren't really sure what they want to do. I think there can sometimes be a little anxiety when one is in country and they see the clock ticking and they don't want to lose their NCE and they need to get back and do something. So we encourage you to take your time, and if you're not fairly certain what you want to do yet, sort of short of what's offered, take your time to look around and figure that out. Even though we offer quite substantial benefits relative to most Coverdell programs, it's still costly in terms of your time and your money, your living expenses, moving here, all that sort of stuff. So you want to use this time like, for me, I just treated it like it was another job. Basically, I needed this degree to go on and have my career. So we encourage you to find that focus and don't be afraid to take time. You can work for 9 months and start school and still have your NCE because it goes on hold. Of course, the Coverdell is focused on service to a domestic community, one of something in the United States physically, or one of its territories, which can include Puerto Rico, American Samoa, Guam, quite a few little territories that we've had. And we have had some fellows who have done work in American Samoa. But in general, we need the work to be focused on the U.S. side of things. We are a border state, and we have a lot of border issues that people work with, and sometimes that can be binational, can be collaborative, but again, the focus needs to be on the domestic part of that. Peace Corps has defined what an underserved community is. It's on the Peace Corps.gov website, I believe, and it's also on our website. I'm not going to read it off to you. It's not something that is a legal requirement at this point, but it's what the current staff has been thinking. And having had experience with AmeriCorps before, it feels very much oriented toward direct service. We actually like to see students who are taking their academic work and their Peace Corps and other professional experience and converting that into something in the community. And in terms of your essays, I think we like to see that thought process and how that's worked with you. If you don't know what the third goal is or don't remember, we encourage you to look at it. It's a big part of our requirements. And so I would say that we do look to see, or our readers look to see, that you have been an active volunteer and advocate for Peace Corps in your community upon your return. Sometimes that might even be a continued connection in your community. That's not always possible, we know. The fit with the University of Arizona is really important, and from my point of view, I think the fit with your proposed academic program is probably the #1 priority that I would like to see for you. We do want active and involved Coverdell Fellows, but if you're not in a program that's advancing your long-term goal, then you really should think about it. It's tempting to go where the money is best. I think that's a very common part of the decision-making process for graduate students. But if you're not in a program that where you can thrive in terms of what you want to do academically and career-wise, then it's not going to be ultimately, it's going to be much harder to have a good experience overall. We have a faculty person who talks about the Coverdell Fellow work as going beyond boots on the ground. In Peace Corps, you've done boots on the ground. Now you need to increase that. And when one looks at the condition and the needs of the world, as the director of the program, I'm a big advocate for Coverdell Fellows taking on leadership roles. It's great to make sandwiches and put out water and file forms and make phone calls, but you're hopefully at a point where you want to take that and see how you can make a difference in a bigger way. And that's something we look for. And then I guess on the cultural and developmental maturity, this comes out in the essays in general. And I think that you should just know that the people that are reading your essays have served in Peace Corps. Not all of them had a great experience. We know that Peace Corps is not always, Peace Corps life in general is not something that we control every minute, every day, every week. And things are challenging and can be difficult here, there, everywhere. So we're hoping that you will share with us your process of growing and learning about international work, and your reflections and conclusions about how to make a difference with what you've learned. Does that kind of sum that up? Yeah. Okay, hopefully that was a little different. Okay.
Essays.
So a few essay tips. I guess the number one is to read the essay prompts carefully. We can usually tell if you copied and pasted from your applications to grad school to the program. And it's not necessarily bad to start with those, but we can tell if you did not spend time really reflecting on the essay prompts, which we feel is often an indication of how interested you are in the program. So just be sure to really read those essay prompts and get at what they're asking. Remember that writing takes time, so you want to give yourself time to do a couple drafts and get feedback from at least 2 people. When you're getting feedback, ask them specific questions. So you might want to ask, for example, am I responding to the question fully? You might want to ask, is all my punctuation and grammar correct? But I do encourage you to to ask specific questions when you're getting feedback. Something bigger than like, is this good? We give you the review criteria. So be sure that you write with those review criteria in mind. And think about your audience, and I'll tell you who your audience is. It is, as Georgia said, people who have experience in the Peace Corps, and some of them have previously been Peace Corps Fellows. All of them are very familiar with the Peace Corps Fellows program and with the University of Arizona and with Tucson. And then write with your competition in mind. So we get a lot of applications, and I'm one of the reviewers. And I have to say, after a while, sometimes the responses get a little repetitive. So we're going to talk about the essay questions, and one of them is a challenge. And if you're writing about that you were lonely and then made friends, we're going to get a lot of essays like that. That's not to say you can't start with that. Start with that and then get more specific and more reflective. Or that your challenge was you didn't speak the language. That's another one that we get a lot of. And again, it's fine to start with that, but keep working until you get a more developed idea.
Yeah, I think that's good. As a long-term grant writer, I would just always say, read the instructions and follow them. Make a little checklist for yourself and take them off.
Yeah, because I'll add too, just in talking with people who have previously been reviewers, they see if you didn't follow the instructions of the essay, to them, that means that you're maybe not ready for grad school. And they're a little bit worried that you might not be able to handle the rigors of the reading and the writing, regardless of if that's true or not. But this is your one chance to prove to them that you know how to respond specifically to an essay put in front of you.
Go ahead.
The first essay is a reflection on a specific challenge you experienced during your volunteer experience in Peace Corps or in another international service. So we do have people apply who are still in their Peace Corps experience, and we have people who apply 20 years after they finish their Peace Corps. So if you are one of the people who did Peace Corps quite a while ago and have had other international service, then we are happy to hear about that other service as well. We really encourage you to describe a specific situation. We have quite a number of these who, I guess, don't really talk about a challenge. So again, we encourage you to be honest and upfront in as much as it's appropriate, and that you want to share. But to talk about something that was actually a difficulty, I think a lot of these kind of the narrative arc was, well, I had a problem and then everything was fine. And that's okay to write like that, but we want to know how you grew through the experience. We want to know how you learned from the experience. So it's also okay to talk about a challenge that didn't necessarily turn out fabulous for everyone involved, where maybe there was something that was quite hard, and in the end, you weren't sort of the victor, or the that it wasn't all, flowers and kittens at the end. So we are interested in the questions that we have at the end. So how did the experience affect the remainder of your service? What did you personally learn? And we're interested in your reflections, persistence, and lessons learned. So it's nice when we see that you are somebody who learns from challenges.
Yeah, my background is in community planning, and the sort of approach to how you solve the problem is of interest to many of the readers as well. And I think sometimes there's a tendency to focus on what a single individual did, and the Peace Corps way is more collaborative in general, I would say. It's not always possible or the case, but that often tends to be where the tension is. And we're looking at how you approached it, and that's yeah, that's what we are. We're also looking for an original slant on this. Don't pick up an essay that you had written for Peace Corps or a blog. You want to make sure that you're really responding to the specific prompts that we show. And yeah, so I think these are all great prompts, actually.
Well, did you write them? Me too.
No, I think Shelley did.
Oh, okay. These prompts have developed over a number of years, and we have found that they tend to show us what we want to know. So I think they've been the same for a number of years, because we've been fairly happy with them.
Yeah, we used to ask about sustainability, but we don't always control that. When you were talking about things not working out, though, I was thinking about a long ago essay from someone that had served in 2 different countries, and the second country was sort of a brand new corporate resource-based town that had sort of been plunked down, and nothing sustainable happened. It was a first time that a Peace Corps person was there. The community was about 2 years old, literally. There was no history. People had come from elsewhere. And it was really a charming essay contrasting the first experience, which had been very deep. The person's actually still living there, bought land there, just really moved there. And the other communities. So the contrast of can be really make a really interesting essay.
Yeah, essay 2.
Yeah.
Start with this one.
You want to talk about that? Oh, well. So leadership and teamwork. What comes to mind instantly? Glow camp, or boy, we have had a lot of glow camp stories over the years. That's fine.
And it is fine.
It is.
Be specific about it. We have nothing against glow camp. We're all for glow camp.
Or the camp for young men.
Yeah.
Or the problems that you had with the other teachers in your school. You get the idea. So we're wanting to know how you actually worked within your work-based community here. And be specific, again, as Shelley says, be specific. Think of a good novel you've read lately, and the specificity makes it really interesting. The where, the who, the weather, whatever it was, the particular individuals, and that'll give it a lot more life. I'll also sort of tuck in there, I guess, a writing suggestion to not use the passive tense when you're writing about active action-based things that you're doing. Shelley?
I think one of the things that is not always clear when you're applying for graduate school is that the university depends on you to shape both the departments and, for example, this program. So that's kind of what we're looking for here is, in what way are you a leader, or in what way are you a person who works well on teams? And so we want to know, how are you going to shape the fellows program, or get an idea of how you might, and how you might shape your department. So I think that's our goal with this question here.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because I wrote my essays a while ago, but I was thinking I almost did this essay about my girls' camp that I directed, and then I ended up changing it and writing about just like a professional experience that I had had at work in Chicago. And part of why I did that is because I wanted to write about some of the like theater and improv things that I was doing, because I felt like that hadn't really been coming out in any other parts of my application. So yeah, I mean, this one doesn't have to be about a leadership role in Peace Corps. It can be about a different time that you were on a well-working team, and it can be a really good opportunity to, share some other aspects of your life or your personality and how you were a leader in those situations.
I think that's a great point, Lisa. We want to know all about you. So kind of try to understand the big picture with your application and what you're showing us holistically.
Right. Yeah. And we do look at this in relation to our outreach assistantship needs from the community. We ask them for position descriptions. So we always have our eye out for somebody with drama experience, or someone who is a photographer or a graphic designer or a web designer, or whatever it is. Barista, not so much. Bartender, not so much, but you get the idea.
I don't know, we could always use a barista. I beg to differ. But yeah, so hopefully that answered the question. For SA2, yes, it does not need to be Peace Corps or even international. It can be any experience.
So we do ask about your long-term career goals, and we know you might not know what your long-term career goals are, but don't tell us that you don't know. Just give us maybe 2 or 3 options. If you give us a couple options, we're gonna assume that you aren't crystal clear, and that is fine with us. But again, we want to know why your study at the University of Arizona, or how your study at the University of Arizona is going to move you forward. You might know that you want to be a teacher, and that's awesome. We love getting applications from teachers, or you might know very specifically, and we also get really excited about those. But again, we want to know how your long-term goals fit in with the University of Arizona, how this will move you towards those long-term goals. And then we're also interested in how you fit with the Tucson community and the Coverdell Fellows program. We know that the knowledge of applicants varies quite a bit, but it is, if you can show us that you can do a little bit of research about the Tucson community and the Coverdell Fellows program, that shows to us that you are interested in the program. So try to be somewhat specific with those things.
Yeah, and I would just add on to that. I think when I think about Tucson's sort of major need, and there are a number of major needs here, but from water to education. And then since we are on the border, there are migrant issues. We do have Native American tribes here, and we also have a large refugee population. So a lot of times people will pick sort of one of these populations that they want to work with, but also take a little time, because a lot of these are complex. We do have agencies listed on our website, our Peace Corps website at the university, with some background and a listing of organizations. So at a minimum, try to sort of look through those and the categories that you're interested in working with, and do a little background research on Tucson and Southern Arizona. There's census data. You can look at city or county government reports, or you can look at state government reports and come up with kind of some understanding of how issues are addressed here. And to me, that's going to be a lot more persuasive than, oh, I want to work with X. But it's not always easy to do the things we think we want to do. And so a sort of practical view of this is useful. It seems like with the outreach assistantship, just keep in mind it's 10 hours a week. So finding the sort of Goldilocks, or Goldilocks and the Three Bears, finding the right size assistantship for the amount of time that we have is one of the issues that I think about a lot. And you want your goals to be clear and achievable, as well as worth doing.
I did want to mention too that we say if you do not have clear career goals, focus on populations with which you'd like to work and problems, opportunities with which you'd like to be involved. If you can give us one or two ideas of the actual jobs that you might do, that I think is helpful. If you can't, that's okay, but if you can, then please do.
Oh, we just had a guest. So Lisa stepped out.
Yeah.
Okay, resume tips. Here you go. I think one thing to know about the resume is well, it's a quick way for us to understand your experience and your skill set, but it is also what we send out to the community organizations to help match what you're going to be doing for your assistantship. So with that, I'll turn it over to Shelley.
We ask for a clean, consistent, easy to read format. Don't spend tons of time making this really flashy and fancy. It's probably, this might be the first thing that reviewers often go to, just to give us a sense of if we're looking at somebody who was recently out of college or somebody who has been in a career for 20 years. So it is kind of give us a sense of where we're starting from. So I often look at this before I look at the essays. And if you are if you finished your undergrad not too long ago, some people wonder, well, should I put in being a barista? And the answer is yes. We do like to know some of the professional experiences you've had, because that shows us that you have like customer service experience. So even if it seems like something that doesn't directly relate to graduate school, that's okay. It's nice for us to know some of the things that you've done. And then this goes back to just having a sense of what the departments and agencies and this program are looking for, and being sure that you speak to those in the CV or resume. They ask, can we submit a CV or does it have to be a resume?
I'd rather have a resume.
Yeah, because these are going to go around to the agencies. Probably two. You don't want to go too much, if any, over 2 pages.
Yeah. Again, it depends a little bit about the field that you're in. If you're in landscape architecture or the arts or graphic design, there's going to be a little different stylistically in your resume, and that's fine. But again, think of it as applying for a job, and you want to focus on not just that I did this or I did that, but what the outcomes are of what you did. And Peace Corps has gotten much better over time in helping volunteers articulate their experience in terms of job needs, professional sorts of experience. So talk to the folks that the Peace Corps National Career Office has some really excellent information about developing resumes and thinking about that. So, action, yeah, Lisa.
And you two can correct me if you don't want this, but I think something to keep in mind is that you send us your DOS, which outlines a lot of your Peace Corps service. And so your resume doesn't have to include all of those things. I would maybe focus the resume on the accomplishments or activities from your Peace Corps service that you're most interested in pursuing. Probably like, I don't know, how many things would that be? Like 3 to 5 bullet points. But yeah, have no fear that the full Peace Corps experience is captured in your application, so it doesn't have to solely be in the resume.
I agree with that. Just to be sure, I have to say that once we get to like application number 25, my eyes do glaze over a bit with the DOS. So if there's anything important, and I think this is what you're saying, just highlight those important things. But yes, we don't want a summary of everything.
I would just add, though, try to make sure there's consistency between the DOS, your resume, and the preliminary form that precedes the essays. And sometimes we end up having to write you or call departments just to clarify what department you're looking at, when you want to start. We've had people include an address but no city or state. So so make our life easy by being as clear and specific about things as possible.
And there's a question. So yes, so the resume should be more concise, less descriptive of the work, with more bullet points. Just as an example, so I think on my resume, and probably still, I did Peace Corps a while ago, but this is still like one line item. I have one bullet for my primary project that I did, and it's, developed a program for X number of people, or, led these trainings for X number of people who then went on to serve X number of people. A bullet for my secondary project, and then 2 other bullets that kind of capture the wide range of other things. So also led education and taught English and did a radio show, and kind of my miscellaneous bullet point. Okay. Any other questions or things we want to add in about the writing process?
I'll just say this was a photo from the Community Food Bank this last early September. You can see a lot of our current fellows in there. We've got about 50 fellows in the program as a whole, and we usually take about 20 to 25. There are other webinars that have details, a little bit greater detail on the process, but yeah. What to do now? Be aware of the academic department application deadline. I was going to say, I've had a lot of people say, when's the deadline? As if they want to get it in at midnight on the deadline day. And just let us remind you that an early, as Mr. Dexter used to say in band, to be early is to be on time. So try to get it in as soon as is feasible after review and correction. Submit both an academic and a Coverdell Fellow application. If you are applying to more than one academic program, you must submit more than one academic application as well, along with the fees. And no, we don't waive the application fees, so sorry. If you can, we would love to meet you. You can, if you're coming to visit Tucson, we have, do you have a slide for our poster event? Okay, that's all right. February 28th, Friday, February 28th, 2020, we are celebrating our outreach year with a poster outreach and research showcase that'll run sort of noon to 3 o'clock at the U of A Student Union. It's a great time to visit because we're all there assembled, and you can, as are the agencies that we are working with this year. So it's a good time to sort of connect with the overall community. And especially in some departments, you probably want to come for their um, meet and greet and orientation that they do for admitted students. I know Mezcoff and the Eller School all have things like that. You'll want to file the FAFSA. That's the Federal Aid Financial, I don't know what SA, it's a form. Service Administration, could be. It's on the education um, .gov website and under financial aid, and you can file it any old time. It starts now, and it's definitely going now. It's good to do that by March 1st, and those are sort of to get the application in. So yeah, and let us know if you have any questions, I guess.
But then briefly.
Oh, and briefly.
Sorry, not done yet.
Okay, so sorry. So how is the incoming class selected? How many fellows are accepted? How many applicants do you receive each year? In the last year we had, I'll start from the bottom, we had 97 applicants. 10% were not admitted to academic programs. We made 31 offers, 22 accepted, 9 declined, 13% matriculated without the Coverdell Fellowship. So this year we have a larger group graduating, but we have 50 assistantships every year. So we take about 20 to 25. And the process for review includes a staff review to make sure that your materials are complete. We will acknowledge receipt of your application. It may take a little bit longer over the winter break because the university will be closed from next Saturday through January 1st. And I will look periodically, but I have other things going as well. And Lisa will not be on duty until the first day of classes in January. So yeah, so that'll be happening, but generally we'll try to get to you as quick as we can. You will see an acknowledgement from the electronic system if you have submitted. It's subtle, but look for it. If you don't see that, it didn't go through.
Just on your screen.
Just on your screen. You don't get an email, sorry. After we check it out, we will have it reviewed by at least 2 other readers who tend to be alumni. We avoid conflicts of interest, so it won't be anybody from your cohort or that you know. And we also, as a third part, are working with the academic departments to find out how you're ranked on their admissions process. And as I think Shelley or Lisa said earlier, sometimes that's a little time consuming. If we do make offers before, we've already got applications in hand, so we're starting to do our reviews now. But offers are always pending admission to an academic degree program. We cannot support you if you're doing prereqs for a nursing program or undergrad work. So sorry about that.
So if I get the fellowship but I don't get into the university, I can't just have the money? Don't worry, no one's actually ever asked that. I'm not making fun of anyone. That's just me.
We like to keep laughing around here. It'd be nice, wouldn't it, to get that fellowship? It's not transferable to other schools, I think is the point here. Peace Corps does not give us money. Sometimes people don't understand that. They give us great publicity and great applicants. And we work a lot with Shelley to help students find other sources of funding, and maybe she can speak to that here quickly. But I think the last thing is to also be clear that you can be here if you're applying. Our orientation process will be the week before the start of school, and the academic calendars are online on the grad college or the main page for the university. Just Yeah, around August 18th, because that's when your assistantship starts up. And we have a 3-day orientation process. It's not all of it, but it's like 4 to 8, 2 to 4, and then a evening potluck. So it kind of takes us through the process, working with the agencies, and then meeting many of the wonderful people in our Peace Corps community here. You're assigned a mentor. We work actively with the cohort over the summer with the question of the week and all of that. So there's really a lot of support in terms of moving here and getting settled.
So we are at 1 o'clock. So if you need to leave, we understand, but we will stick around for a few minutes if there are other questions or things that people want to add. I think I'm pretty sure I'm recording this. Hopefully, fingers crossed. It appears that it is, and so within the next week, we're going to aim to get this posted on the website and send it out to people also. So, any other questions or final thoughts?
Shelley, could you tell us a little bit about your other support for grad students?
So there's, depending on the field that you're in, there are a number of other fellowships for graduate school. So I would encourage you to do a little research. Some of those are from other organizations outside the university, and then there's often possibilities from within your department or within your college. So I guess in short, just know that this isn't your only option, that there are other options, and it's worth doing a bit of research.
Anything else?
Oh,
we do have a question.
So the general time commitment for the service projects, well, so first of all, the assistantship, and I think we mentioned that is approximately 10 hours a week. The service projects, I think the requirement is 6 projects over the course of the year. Most of them, the ones that we coordinate and offer, are usually on the weekends or in the evening, and so they're probably 3 to 4 hours, I would guess, on average. But again, you can also do your own service projects and coordinate those on your own. And then the outreach programs, I think we require 2 or 3 sessions over the course of the academic year, and those are on average 1 to 3 hours of you tabling an event or going to a classroom and doing a presentation. Panel discussions too. They're all pretty fun, and I think we end up doing a lot of them in groups, so then it's kind of it's not too much, it's not too strenuous, because you're hanging out with your friends and doing something that you probably, I know when I move to a new place, I always want to get involved in these kinds of activities, so it's actually really helpful to have it all organized for me, and then I show up to the ones that are planned.
If the requirements, I think that was a good question. I don't want you to interpret this in the wrong way, but hopefully the requirements do look like something that you want to do anyways on your own.
And I think it's an interesting question to ask at the different schools, because the internship or assistantship work with an underserved community is not mandated in terms of time. It has to happen, but it's up to the different schools to determine how much time is involved. So ours ends up being about 300 hours for the academic year. For the assistantship, we have a 15-week semester basically, so at 10 hours a week. But you do get holidays off. You don't have to report on the holidays, so it's often a little less, and sometimes it's more. We have people that actually work full-time in departments like public administration, where classes are at night, or in the Teach Arizona and the UA South programs, where you're teaching full-time basically. So I would say the real question is it doable? And Lisa, do you want to comment on that? I think you've already talked a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I'm doing it. Yeah, I think, there definitely is, you have to organize your time. That kind of goes with anyone coming back to graduate school, is just time management. But I think all of the fellows here would say there are definitely ways to make it work, and most of us, managed to do that, and we really enjoyed along the way. Have another question. I served in Peace Corps with my spouse. Is it possible for both to be Peace Corps fellows? Yes, we've had a few couples over the years. Had a lot, actually. I think we have one of the partners graduated and one is still in the program. And then a couple that served together but was not married just got engaged. And they're both here.
Yeah, it's definitely possible, but you both have to go through the application process and have to be admitted. Occasionally, we've had couples kind of rotate, where one fellow would do the program and the other would work full time, and then they would swap. So there are different ways to do it, but it can be a big positive, and we don't have any rules against that. I know I'm always think back to one couple who came here long ago, and we were their number 2 choice for both of them because they each had a different number 1 choice. So we lucked out with this this particular duo.
All right, well, I think we'll wrap this up. Thank you guys for joining us on your Monday day, whatever time it is, wherever you are. And yes, feel free to contact our office if you have other questions by email. And we hope that you will apply. And if you do, we look forward to your applications, and especially in light of today, reading your essays. All right, thank you.